Hello everybody, Andy here from Glass of Dead, a Kill Team channel on the YouTube. How's it going? We have our big balance patch update, and there's been quite a few changes, about 30 or so, across 18 different teams. We're going to get straight into it. So you know what this is me reading everything out to you so you don't have to read it yourself. And this isn't just the highlights, this is every single thing that they make the changes for. So consider this a bit more of a background music kind of video. You probably don't need to be watching the screen, although I will have all of the different PDFs up at different points. But this is a little bit of a slower video. There you go. Consider it more of a podcast. Right, first things first though, let's get straight into it. We go to their Kill Team article where they tell us some stuff, and there's something interesting to note here at the bottom paragraph. They mention something very useful for all of us. So in case you don't know, there is going to be as they say here, an annual rotation. We didn't really know how it was going to work. We had assumed that whenever the next box, Tomb World, drops, is it called Tomb World? Probably. We would assume around that time we would get the annual rotation, but it will be our first time, so we don't quite know how it works. And basically year one teams, so everything from Deathcore all the way up to Galapox, will be removed from golden ticket tournament legal tournaments. Yeah, let's go with that. Cool. How they've given us an actual date. So they've said it will happen after the World Championships, which happen in November, I believe November 9th. And so we will get the update then, which means this makes sense, because if you have won your ticket this year for the golden ticket for this Warhammer World Championships, you may well have won it with a team, and it's the only team you can play, and it's a team that loses legality for that event before the actual update would have occurred. So this makes sense, and I'm glad that they're clarifying it now. If you went out and you won your ticket with Phobos, good news, Phobos are still legal in November. Nice. However, they've also noted here that Strike Force Varial, the team that nobody's going to play because they're going to be completely overshadowed by Deathwatch, will always be non-big tournament legal. So if you ever go to a golden ticket event, you won't be allowed to use Strike Force Varial. That is also good clarification. Nice. And I think, if I'm honest, that's for the best, because we should not be allowing that kind of gambling gacha stuff to enter, competitive events. It makes no sense. Okay, cool. Right. In case you're wondering, these are all of the factions that have had updates, including core rules changes, which are very strange. I'm really interested about why they put them into this balance patch update when they could have just come 2 weeks ago in the FAQ errata round, because they are just FAQ erratas, so quite strange, but there you go. Cool. So the big standouts here, and I've moved them right up to the front, is we are having changes to Plague Marines, which are huge, by the way. We're having changes to Angels of Death, and then we're also having everything else kind of brought into line. But if you're just a casual player, your Angels of Death and Plague Marines are the two starter sets, so we will cover those first. After the core rules, right? We've got to do the core rules first. So let's get straight to the core rules. So we have one piece of commentary and two actual changes. So, on guard, they've changed this again. So now, Gallowdark, close quarters, if you go on guard, there is an additional bullet point or end of paragraph. If you do go on guard, that friendly operative cannot counteract during the turning point. Nice. This makes total sense. In case you don't know, you could have as your third action gone on guard, and then you trigger the guard, and then potentially you would shoot, and then you would be able to counteract that same model as like the next activation. And so it's insane. It's insane. So this is good. I like this change. You shouldn't be allowed to do both. Perfect. Makes sense. We then also get a change to how severe works. So we have changed the second sentence to read: the devastating and piercing crits weapon rules still take effect, but punishing and rending don't. So this is a bit of an interesting one. I don't know if there is logic behind why they say yes, devastating and piercing retain, but punishing and rending don't. Yes, this is very strange. So severe, in case you don't know, is if you do not roll a crit in your dice, you can change a normal to a crit. That's severe. It's a very strong one. It means you're always guaranteed a crit. But now they're saying if you have severe, which means you're guaranteed a crit, there are teams where you can get severe on the weapon and you get rending. So you are guaranteed 2 crits, right? And it's like, well, hold on. Punishing is similar. If you roll a crit, then you can change a miss to a normal. And so they're saying, no, you don't get those now. So, yeah, fine. These do make sense. I do understand why they are different things. It just would have been nice if, yeah, it's fine. Cool. That is a good clarification. It is ultimately a balance patch change because it is very targeted, but only at a very few models. So cool, good to know. And then we get rules commentary. While shooting, fighting, or retaliating, if I retain a dice as a normal success, e.g. accurate 1, can I use another rule to retain it again as a critical success, e.g. rending? This is a great question. Love to see it because we do have multiple instances where you can kind of stack these retains and when do they retain, and there's no real answer before, but now we have one. No, a dice can only be retained once. Note, however, that some rules refer specifically to changing a retained dice, e.g. the severe weapon rule, and that these allow a dice to be changed after being retained. Okay, so I get what they're saying. Makes sense. I do not think this is intuitive and good rules writing from a... Sorry. I understand the logic chain that they've gone down to get to this. I do not think it is intuitive rules writing. I think that perhaps KT devs are getting so engrossed in their own rules as written. And they're like, well, we said this. And so logically it does work. It's like, yeah, but you write the rules. You can change it. You can make it work how you want. It's fine. I'm just a big fan of rules should be intuitive. A good thing when writing is to remember that enemies are the words are the enemies. You should see how people want to play the game and then do your absolute best to make sure that the rules as they are written allow that to occur. And getting super deep into logic chains that don't have intuitive chains behind them, not great. Anyway, moving on. Let's go to the Angels of Death. Anyway, those are all good changes. I like everything they've said. Nice. Let's go. Angels of Death. So they've actually made 4 changes. Now, for a long time, I've been saying that elites in general are a little bit too strong. Let's see the changes they have made. First up is Dueler. If you've ever played Angels of Death, you have played Dueler. I'm gonna tell you right now, I have only ever played Angels of Death right from day one, before I had it, before everybody else had it. Day one, how should I play this team? I'm obviously going to take aggressive and Dueler. Cool. Let's see what happens now. Change to read. Whenever this operative is fighting or retaliating, each of your normal successes can block 1 unresolved critical success, unless the enemy operative's weapon has the brutal weapon rule. Okay, so this used to be 2 bullet points, and it was also worded slightly differently. So you used to be able to, one time, with a normal, block a crit. Now, slight buff to that, 1 bullet point, you can block as many crits as you want with as many normals as you have. Nice, cool, great. And they have just straight up removed blocking 2 with a crit dice. And I don't know how to play Angels of Death anymore, because that rule was so strong, you would never, ever not take it. And that single bullet point, forget the rest of the team and how good or bad they are in general, that single bullet point on a 5 dice weapon, as all of them are, was so strong and gate kept so many teams. This one change is probably the biggest change to the most played team in the game. But actually, if we check the stats from in a tournament perspective, they are the 2nd most played team. The actual most played team are Plague Marines by like 3 games. It's not much. They're very, very similar. And so we will look at what they've had changed, because they have had a big change as well. But I do think that the change to Dueler is probably the biggest change in the game. Right, let's keep going. Intercessor Sergeant and Assault Intercessor Sergeant both seem to have had, I assume, the same change. So I'm going to read one of them. Let's do that. So, the Doctrine Warfare rule now reads, you can do each of the following once per battle. Whenever you would use the Combat Doctrine strat ploy, and then select Devastator, if its operative is in the kill zone, it costs you 0 CP. Whereas then on the Assault Intercessor, instead of a Devastator Doctrine, it is Assault Doctrine. Cool. It will cost you 0 CP. And then it goes on, whenever you would use the Combat Doctrine strategy ploy and then select Tactical, if this operative is in the kill zone, it costs you 0 CP. So, I actually don't know what the change is here. I thought both of these already gave that. I thought maybe they've added, they can both do Tactical, whereas before one could only do they could only do Devastator or Assault or Tactical. I feel this is a buff. There you go. That's what I'm saying. I feel they've added one point here that I clearly already thought was a thing. But that's cool. Okay, sweet. I would still say that the captain's the go-to every time. Hence why these two models needed a slight buff. Cool. Heavy Intercessor gets a buff going from 4-inch move to 5-inch move, although I'm sure many people will say this isn't a change at all because I always did the dumb little shenanigan where I gave them the mobile shield, and so they're going to be 4 anyway. But there you go. This is very useful. 4-inch move sucks. 5-inch move, although it's incredibly slow, is much better. It also means that looking to the fall, we can assume that Deathwatch Gravis will be 5-inch move instead of 4. I wonder if they'll link that up. And then we have a change to faction equipment tilting shields. So after your opponent rolls their attack dice, but before rerolls. That was a previous errata. I knew that because I've already read that and I've commented on it. Let's go and check out Plague Marines. I think they're the last one. Yeah, Plague Marines. They've had one change. They have removed a single bullet point. Now, I'm a Plague Marine noob. I've only just started playing them. And as I was learning their rules, I was like, how does this team work? Okay, you want to spread poison, but spreading poison is actually quite difficult. It doesn't happen easily. Oh, but you know what? It doesn't matter because the real rule to this team is contagion, and it's the first bullet point, which is whenever the enemy is within your control range, they are -1 hit. There you go. So if they're Marines, they're not hitting on 3s, they're hitting on 4s. Lovely. And that's all you need to know. If you get a poison on somebody, fine, who cares, whatever. But you almost don't get to poison people. That's how I found them. And so all I remembered for their overarching rules was, right, if they ever charge me, they're -1 to hit. Nice. They have removed that. This is massive. I don't think it's as big as Dueler of a change, but again, turning some of these melee teams to being across the board -1 to hit, having that removed, this again stops the first/second most played team in the game from straight up gatekeeping multiple teams. So these two changes combined will probably have more effect on the game than any of the other changes we're about to read. Purely from the most people out there play these two teams. There you go. That's the thing. Sweet. Right. Okay, those are the big changes. Because those are the big teams. Awesome. With that in mind, let's take a quick moment to ourselves. These are big changes. Do we think that Plague Marines and Angels of Death are still top tier teams and still viable if you're looking to win a golden ticket? Sorry, there are some tournaments in the US that have like 8 players and have golden tickets. Let's not use that as a phrase to mean good. Do we think that these two teams still have the cojones, if you will, to win a 5-round tournament? Let's say that. I'm kind of leaning towards no. I think that these are big and these are good. And that's what she said. Let's move on. Okay, we go over to the Hierotech Circle. 4 changes, sorry. I'm good at reading and counting. So, we add something to the interstitial command action, and it is right at the end, an enemy operative, all while counteracting. So, you know what? I told you this is going to be a slow one, because I'm going to see what it said before. We go over to Battle Kit, we go over to Faction Rules, we swap on over to our Bad Mans, our High-Tech Circle, which we've got to be familiar with, because... So, it used to be, this kind of while within control range of an enemy operative, or while counteracting. So they can't be in control range of an enemy operative, or while they are counteracting. Okay. Wait, what's interstitial command? Oh, wait, what? Invisible within 6? Within 6? Oh, okay, yeah, you make them do a 1 AP action. You can move them doing an action. Oh, okay, alright, cool. That's fine. So if you were ever counteracting, you could interstitial command to make somebody else perform a move or a shoot. Now you can't do that. Okay, I think that's a fair change. That makes sense to me. We then get to the Chronomancer operative, Time Splinter action. Both distances in second and third sentence of effect change to 5. I thought it was at 4. Is this actually a buff? It's on the Chronomancer operative, Time Splinter. It is currently at 6. It was at 6? Oh, they changed the nanomine to 4. Okay, I was thinking of the other thing. There you go. Great stuff. So, that gets a 1-inch reduction, but because it's an aura, it's really a 2-inch reduction. And then we have the last sentence of effect change to read. Note that a comms device from Universal Community only affects the first distance of this rule. Nice. Clarifying what comms affects is good. Thank you. And that's the time spent interaction. And then finally, relevant part of condition change to read an enemy operative during the first turning point, or if a friendly operative has already performed this action during this turning point. Cool. Good. That's fine. I can intuitively figure out what that means, but let's take a look at Time Splinter. So it is support, so therefore comms would interact with it. And again, we have the same thing to the conditions. The operative can perform range of an enemy operative during the first turning point. That's commas. That's an additional clarification, and then an additional condition, and then an additional condition as well, or if a friendly operative has already performed the action during the turn. Cool, nice. And the comms device only increases the range of being visible to and within 6 of this operative, so that's now 5 of this operative, plus 3 for comms device. You do the maths. 8? Yeah, probably. That sounds right, doesn't it? It's 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, good. But it will not increase this, remove the kills and set it back up within 6. So you're only setting it up within 5. That second bit isn't adjusted. This makes sense. In case you don't know, Chronomancer is currently the High-Tech Circle's Circle Jerk Cryptech, because they like to fuck with you. There you go. And it's really annoying and boring, to be honest with you. And we will say, if you go and read their article, they actually pointed out that one of the things they have deliberately done is they've made changes across many different factions that had ways of forcing interaction in Turning Point 1, essentially. So, if you recall last edition, 2021, there were quite a few, alpha strikes. There were quite a few alpha strikes in the game, and inevitably, the ability to alpha strike just inherently made that team a top tier team. You know, whether they were currently in vogue or not, doesn't matter. It was a top tier team once people figured out how to do the alpha strike. Kill seems such a lethal game. If you are able to get a turn 1 attack when your opponent, in the opponent's deployment zone, that is not good for the game. It's just, yeah, there you go. And there are some teams that are able to get a turn 1 alpha strike in the game still. It is not as easy and simple these days as just, oh, you are in your deployment zone behind cover, I can still get you. But after they've had their turn 1 repositioning of a few models, then they can get you. Which is essentially the same thing, because ultimately they will just wait to do their alpha strike as their final action, right? So there you go. So this is good. They've toned this down a little bit. Being able to yeet somebody up the board 9 inches is obviously a little bit too far. Nice. Okay, That's the Hyrotech. We get to the Sanctifiers. Similar thing here. They have reduced how far you can move turn 1. So the Confessor Operative lead the procession rule, but each cannot move more than 3 inches and must end the move. I believe it was 6 inches. Each cannot move more than 3 inches. I wonder why they've said each cannot move more than 3 inches, because I would have assumed they just would change the number from a 6 to a 3. Let's go find out. Lead the procession. Oh, okay. Each turn point after the first. Where have they changed that then? Interesting. Relevant part of third sentence. Yes, the relevant part of third sentence. Okay. If you do, blah, 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 blah. Each of those friendly sacrifice operatives can meet for a free charge. After this operative ends that action, users can charge for back or reposition. Okay, alright, so here's what's happened. Basically, they have now instituted that's the Hyrotech circle. It used to just be you can move however far you can move, which for all of them was 6 inches. They just didn't need to put a limiter on it before. Now they've said, no, 3-inch limit. Cool. So you can still do all of those things. You can still do a charge, a fallback, a reposition, but now it is a 3-inch limit. It just had not been limited before because they allowed you to do a 6-inch. Cool. Love a 6-incher. So we then get the Reliquant Operative Imperial Cult Devotion rule. You got to be visible. Nice. That makes sense. Cool. Used to be able to do it without visibility. And then faction rules Blaze. Blaze weapon. If you inflict damage with any crits. Was this just retained before? It's crazy if so. Sorry, what was that on? Faction rule. Was that just retained? Or have they just changed the wording? Blaze, someone, if you retain any crits. If you retain any critical successes. Oh, it was just on retain. Okay. Now let's say you've got to do damage. So in case you don't know, this is again one of those consistency things that should have been picked up in the last balance patch in that case. Yeah, just most dice that allow you to do additional damage require you to do initial damage before you can do additional damage. But obviously Blaze had just been retained. That's fine. It's a small nerf, makes sense. We then get Nemclaw. The boys in blue and black, I guess. So, in Midnight Clad, more than 8 inches from enemy operative, it's visible suit. So, it used to be 6 inches. So, that, in case you don't know, if you are outside of 6 inches from the Night Dudes, what are they called? Nemesis Claw, thank you. From the Marine, then they are always obscured. Well, sorry, when they're in Midnight, which is when they're within 1 inch of heavy terrain. Now that has changed to 8 inches. I've got to be honest. You normally have somebody within 8 inches of an enemy. This really just means that they get to have a very free deployment, but that's kind of it. And in deployment, almost all maps are set up so that you can hide behind heavy terrain. So this feels like they've almost removed the rule in essence, but fine, cool, that's fine. So, because you know what, in fairness, a lot of teams are shooting focus and they don't have access to remove obscurity, which means you then have to close with this team, and then once you've closed, they win because the team is designed as a close combat Marine team, and they are designed that when they close the distance with you, they win. But your team is designed that you don't let the enemy close the distance with you. So in essence, this team was a hard counter, a gatekeeper to certain teams. In a similar way that the double parry from Dueler or the -1 to hit from the Plague Marines was a gatekeep, a hard counter to certain melee teams. This was a hard counter to certain shooting teams. We then get Return to Darkness. It can move on the 4 inches during an action, and okay. So this was in the strategy phase. You can play this and you get to move your move, which is 6 inches. Now they're saying you can only move 4 inches. There you go. Nice. But you get to flip your order. Okay, I suppose. I mean, that seems like a fine little tweak. They're clearly trying to nerf the team. I don't know if this was a huge issue. In essence, it means you get a dash plus an extra 1 inch to get around a corner so you don't get shot. Is how I would view it. So if you have a piece of terrain within dash distance of you, you then get the extra inch to actually tow in. And then we get Visionary Rule. Prescience. At the end of each turn point, discard your prescience point. Okay, so I actually had played Nemclaw for the first 6 months of this edition, thinking that you did discard your prescience points every turn. And then it was only the last balance patch when they actually changed something to it that I was like, oh, you're meant to retain your prescience points. That's so weird. Because I had first learned to play Vespid, where you did discard your command, what are they called? Your hive mind points, whatever they're called. And then obviously that got buffed to you keep them. And now that was when I then realized, oh, you don't discard the prescience points. How weird. Anyway, cool. And that's a nice few little tweaks to them. Clearly, they finally accepted that maybe the Marines are a little bit too strong, so we're getting nerfs across the board. That means we've still got Phobos, we've still got Warp Coven and Legionary to go. I wonder which of those are getting touched. I actually can't remember. I think all of them. Warp Coven, Legionary, Scouts. They need a nerf. Phobos, okay, so they are actually bringing all of the Marines down. Interesting. It's hot. I wonder who's been saying for the past 9 months that maybe Marines are too strong and too dominant. That's weird. That's weird. Oh, not me. The only person that cares, apparently. No, also, literally, the battle kit team. Kill Team Mercenarios, who have literally had all the Marine teams as S tier or A+ tier for the last 9 months. Yeah. That's great. Okay. Phobos, what have they had changed? Deadly shots. So you're shooting them, okay, isn't covered more than 6 inches from it. That friendly optics range weapons have the balanced weapon rule. Okay, cool. So you don't get to shoot them close up. This is a big change actually, as I don't know if you know how most shooting tends to happen in Kill Team, but it basically means that you can't be as aggressive. You have to be more reactive with your deadly shot now. You know, before you could have moved to within 2, shoot, you're getting those sweet deadly shots off. Now you couldn't do that, to clarify. It's fine. It would only work on 1 shoot. Now, no, you've got to be over 6. So it's going to be much more a case of the enemy comes up, and then after they get a kill, you can punish them with deadly shots because you're over 6 and they are in the open. So that's an interesting one. Cool. I know that Phobos are generally doing quite well, so they probably need that. Yep, so they've just changed the novitiates inflict damage with every crit, so it's not just a retain. This is good. They just bring things in line. Pathfinders. Now, Pathfinders had some big buffs. Do we think these are going to be nerfs, or do we think they're going to be buffs? I'm guessing nerfs. Let's see. So, recon sweep. You cannot use this point during the first turning point. So you manage to use it in the first turning point. Recon sweep. Isn't that just you get a dash if you're within 6 inches of the edge, I think? So can't use it in the first turn. Fine. Makes sense. Make them less mobile. Okay. And the grav inhibitor drone. This is a drone that I heard some of the top tier players consider to be taken because it basically means you stop charges, which is, you know, that's what Tau need. They suck in melee. They have no good melee operatives at all. You need a way to slow down teams like, for example, Nemclaw, who just get in and wreck. So let's see what it does now. Whenever an enemy operative performs an action in which it moves, excluding dash, if it would move visible to and within 6 of this operative, treat the distance as an additional 2 inches and ignore the additional distances from the obscuring and accessible terrain rules. Ignore the additional distances from the obstructing and accessible terrain rules. Okay, we're going to find out what the hell this used to be. Because what it is, right, is I think I know what something does, but then they phrase it in such a weird way that I'm like, oh, maybe it didn't do that. Because I've played the pulse accelerator drone. Sorry, the gravity inhibitor drone. Right. Oh god, we're getting deep in on this, aren't we? Phobos, novitiates. Here we go, pathfinders. So this is first bullet point. An additional 2 inches and ignore additional distance. Let's see. So whenever an enemy operative performs an action in which it moves, if it would move visible to within 6, this operative subtract 2 of the total distance it can move during that action to move 2 knows. Okay, cool. Fine. So I thought it was that. It just again feels so wordy. Basically, it's still a minus 2 inches. I thought it was a minus 2 inches, but then they have the 2 inches there as as chained text. So I thought, oh, maybe it wasn't 2. No, so it's still -2. But if they've gone through a door, instead of being -3, is now still only -2, which I think is fair. Because otherwise, you turn charges into a 3-inch charge. It's like, nah, what's the point? What are we doing here? Cool. I think that's a fair change. I don't know if that's needed for balance, but it's definitely needed for not feeling like some real dick action, you know? Right, we then get the breaches. Now, of course, we know these guys need a buff. So, Void Jammer, Operative, Guy Skull, Detonator, Lethal 5, Weapon will change to Lethal 4. Oh, okay. Alright, Lethal 4-ups, pretty solid. Nice. And then everybody else got +1 wound. There you go. They announced that in the article. So everyone gets +1 wound. This is probably needed. They were 7 wound models. You know, it just means, like, look, all of these guys here, the Hatch Cutter, the Act, the people you actually want in melee are still dying to 2 hits from a Marine, right? So there's no changes to that, but it would have meant that breaches struggled in melee against normal 7 wound dudes, right? You weren't guaranteed kills into them even with your melee specialists, because maybe they just tap. Now, not the case. So that makes sense. This is kind of replicating a piece of equipment they had in last edition called, I think it's just Stims, where it just gave everyone +1 health. And now they've just added that back in as an overall rule. Nice. Will it fix breaches? Probably not. That's fine. Hunter Clade, a big balance for the Clade. So, it used to be you could take 6 of these operatives combined. Now you can take 7, so it's +1 model. There you go. That's their big change. And then also, Omnicide Imperative is one of the imperatives. You used to take damage if you use this. Sorry, it's not an imperative, it's a Firefly ploy. You used to take damage to be able to do this. Now you don't. Obviously. Indeed, you know, I do like the idea of a team. So basically, with this team, a lot of your things make you stronger and make you weaker. That's kind of the Hunter Clade's identity. You do a thing, and it makes you better at one thing, but worse at another thing. And in this instance, it would damage you, but then make you better at another thing. The problem is that for that to really work, you know, it's a really fine balance. So, if you spend the command point, which is a resource in itself, to make you really good at shooting, if you're not good at shooting and it just bumps you up to acceptable at shooting for a resource point, it's like, hold on, no, I need to go from sucky to amazing for a resource point, not sucky to okay. Because you know what? Every other team I'm playing against is already okay. And then they use their resource points to go to good, right? That's generally the Hunter Clay's issue. The design space of sucking at everything and then choosing what you get to be good at for a turn is cool. I do like that, and even paying costs additional to just command points, using health. That is a cool concept. They just missed the mark a bit with the Hunter Clade. Cool. We then go to the Legionaries, sorry. So this is no, we still have Warp coming to go. So what have they done here? These guys have been really untouched since they were absolutely OP broken. Almost as much as Warp Coven for the first 3 months of the edition. So I'm actually not sure if they're going to be taking nerfs or buffs here. Really interesting. Let's have a read. So there's 4 changes. So, Fickle Fates. They're removing something. So you now get Balanced. If the weapon already has that weapon rule, it has the Relentless weapon rule. If I had to guess, Fickle Fates would have been Ceaseless. Let's see what it is. So, lovely. So we go to Legionaries, which exist, I'm sure. Fickle Fates. So this used to get, it gave you Ceaseless, and then would bump you up to Relentless. Now, you just get Balanced. Cool. That makes sense. Look. Getting rerolls are incredibly powerful. You're already throwing, lots of dice. So it's fine. Cool. So you swap from Ceaseless to Balanced. Fine. Cool. and you have no way to get relentless with it, which is fair. Cool. Yeah, giving the Reaper chain cannon relentless is insane, to be clear. Why would you ever play that on anything else? Right. Blood for the Blood God. Inflict 1 additional damage to a max of 7. Good. So, basically, your leader already crits for 7. And it was like a guaranteed crit because you got 5 dice, and like lethal 5. And so you were able to crit for 8 incredibly consistently. Ditto for the thing below it, which is Optive's melee weapons to a max of 7. Good, I like that. Bringing both of these in line, I think that, yeah, being able to one-shot kill 8 wound Optives has to be a real decision, right? You have to be like, no, the team isn't balanced if they can't one-shot 8 wound Optives, right? Whereas I suspect these guys were written quite early and they were like, well, they've got a strong weapon, so it should be a 7. You know, it should be a crit on a 7 because that's how strong they are. And then it's like, oh, and hey, Blood for the Blood God, you get +1 damage. Cool, that's great. And now they're like, no, that doesn't make sense. We didn't actually intend for them to be able to one-shot 8 wound models. Cool. So they've just capped that. I think that works for us. I like that. And then Nurgle keyword moved to other paragraph and paragraphs reordered. Strategy ploys implacable. Is this a buff? Strat ploys implacable. So you can ignore any changes to the stats of friendly legionary Optives from being injured. And they've reordered the paragraphs. Okay. So just everybody on the team can not be injured, and then whenever an Optive is shooting a friendly Nurgle Optive, piercing 1, piercing crits are piercing crits instead. So they are now both Nurgle? Where are we? Nurgle keyword moved to other paragraph and paragraphs reordered. Oh. Move. Okay, I'm with you. So this, you can't be injured, is now the Nurgle specific effect. Weapons with piercing 1 become piercing crits instead is the generic effect. That is massive. Being able to not be injured is so good with these Marines across the board. Like, it's just so strong. This is basically turn 3, turn 4, you're using this every time, maybe even turn 2, depending on how you see the turn playing out. That is a huge change. That is a huge change. It will now lock people more into Nurgle, and then if you want to go Nurgle, it means you're not going Tzeentch, etc, etc. So that's a really big change. Yeah, impactful. Not as impactful as what happened to the other teams, of course. Legionary, not Legionary, sorry. Angels of Death and what are they called? Plague Marines. But yeah, okay, all right. Big changes there. Big, all nerfs. All nerfs. Good. Good. All right. Chaos Cult, let's do it. We're almost at Warp Coven for the marine lovers out there, don't worry. So we've got 2 changes. I think these guys are going to be taking nerfs because they've been going a bit too strong under the radar for a little bit now. So let's see what changes happen. Strat ploys, exultation in pain. Ignore any changes to the hit stat of friendly Chaos Cult Optive weapons from being injured, including their weapon stats. I suspect what this is, total guess, is that you are saying that so weapons are things that you have in your data sheet, and I suspect would mean that when you throw grenades, right, like a grenade isn't your weapon because it's not on your data sheet, I think is what this was going to mean. And therefore you can't ignore a -1 to hit from injured or something when you throw a crack. So those cracks and frags are now going to be hitting on 5s instead of 4s. That's going to suck. Total guess, but I'm not going to look into what the hell that means because it's Chaos Cults, nobody cares. And then faction rules: a cursed gift barb the first time you strike during that sequence, also inflict 1 damage. I just assumed that was always inflict 1 damage. Nice. I don't care about Chaos Cult. Nice. Guys, leave a comment if you hate how much I just said I dislike your main faction. Thank you. Engage with that algorithm, you allege. Cheers. Okay, we then get Scout Squad. I'm familiar with the Scouts. Although a 5 point emboldened aspirant, I don't know what that was. We're gonna have to check. Let's see what they've changed first. These 5 point with a friendly rolled operative performs a shoot or fight action, and they've removed at the end of the roll attack dice step after, and they've added after any rerolls. At the end of the roll attack dice step. Oh, okay. I think because after you've, I think this is just a sequencing issue with how they worded this one ploy, and so technically you retain dice, and then they said, oh, but you can reroll actually, and now they've said, yeah, okay, all right, fine, and now you get to retain one of your normal successes as a critical success. Cool, okay, fine. Yeah, that does feel like, I mean, I realise that it is under the errata section for the scouts, as opposed to whatever everything else is called. Oh, it's all under erratas? Alright, fine. Moving on. Right, Warp Coven. Okay, final Marine team. This has to be nerfs. I want to see these guys I want to see them burned into the ground with Warp Flame. What are we going to get? Prospering Kopesh goes from 5 attacks to 4 and gets balanced. If I had to guess, ceaseless. It was ceaseless, wasn't it? I'm going to check. I'm going to check just so that I can properly laugh at the Warp Coven players there. Sorry, Warp Coven players. Prospering Kopesh. Oh, was it? It was lethal 5, so it loses lethal 5 and becomes balanced. Where are we? Oh no, you get balanced in addition. Oh, you've been buffed, you bastards! How could you do this to me? No. Okay, all right. So we go from 5 dice to 4. Lethal 5 balanced. Look, that Prospering Kopesh is mad at 5 dice, lethal 5, 6, so... Okay. Hey, hot take. 5 dice, better than 4 dice. 4 dice balanced, better than 5 dice. I think that's a buff. I don't care what the maths say. I'm giving you the reality. Getting a reroll means that you have resiliency and consistency. I would take 4 dice balanced. Well, I prefer 4 dice ceaseless, don't get me wrong, but I'll take 4 dice with a reroll over 5 dice. I've rolled 5 dice and got a 1 hit. I've never rolled 4 dice and only got a 1 hit. Let me tell you that, buddy. It's never happened. Balanced? I suspect that is so close to not having any effect on the maths that it's the same, and therefore a reroll is better than just native dice. And then we get the Strat Ploys, Brotherhood of Sorcerers. They've just had balanced weapon or ceaseless instead. So you don't get ceaseless. Cool. Okay, those are tiny changes. Yeah, why would we make big changes to the most powerful faction in the game? Good question. Yeah, I don't know. Let's just not do that. That makes sense. Okay. Ooh, okay, 2 more, and then I'll have a final thoughts, and we can wrap this up. Brood Brothers. So Brood Brothers, you don't see too much power in the lower ranking tournaments, but they are one of the best in higher ranking tournaments. So I'm expecting nerfs here. You can't use Insidious in the first turn point. So I knew this because it was said in the article. I am going to find out what Insidious is because I don't play these guys. I played them once this edition. I think I know what this is. It's a forward deploy, but let's find out what it actually is. Use the tableau after an activation. For the next activation, you perform a free dash action with a friendly Brood Brother operative as long as it's not... Okay, yes. So basically, Brood Brothers were another team that had access to an alpha strike. Yep, Insidious is just, hey, you know that... So basically, it gave you a 12-inch threat range turn 1. That's it. Now, it's only a 9-inch threat range. Turn 1. Cool. Ooh, I see a change to Magus. I'm going to get that to that in a sec, but that's big because the Magus is the only operative anybody picks. That's interesting. Right, we then get the Icon Ward operative. You've got to be visible to within 6. I'm going to guess that it didn't need to be visible. It was only within 6, so that's a nerf. Only a small one. I don't think that's that big of a deal. I'm almost taking these visible to things as being, you know, they're kind of a quality of life downgrade, which isn't good. You don't really want quality of life downgrades in place of actual balance, let's be clear. But the place that isn't just a quality of life downgrade is on things like Into the Dark. So clearly, yeah, you get me. Right, we get the Magus Optive. What are they changing? So first sentence is changed through. They've changed the whole sentence. So if this optive is in the kill zone, take one of the following for friend to have until the end of the turn, or until this optive is incapacitated, whichever comes first. What did they have? Because so everybody would always pick the Magus because it gives you an invuln save and it means you're never injured. Now, Magus, I'll give you 3 things. So now you pick one of these every turn. So you can ignore piercing, you can not be injured, or you can ignore changes to the APL stats. I'm going to be honest, you'll probably still pick the Magus. There you go. I'm glad I could define that for you all. And then Primus Optive, Mastermind Rule, this is a nerf. Do one of the following. You cannot select each option more than once per battle. Could you do that before? Let's see how it's worded. Mastermind, once per turning point after rolling off the... Oh yeah, okay, you could do this every turn. Oh, I didn't. Nobody's ever used him. Nobody knew you could do this. That's great. Okay, I like it. So now you can add 1 to your dice result, or if you didn't have an initiative previously, you can re-roll your dice, and you can only do each of those once in the game. Cool. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. That works. These are all quite small. The only truly impactful one, I believe, is Insidious, which truly starts to remove... Sorry, not the only truly impactful one. The one that I think is targeted to do what it needs to do and remove alpha strikes from the game, which needs to be done, is Insidious. Everything else feels like... I feel like the Brewmind Devotional, this is just bringing it in line with how most things work now. I don't think that's an intended nerf, just something they wanted to do. And then these two are just small touches, which I don't think is going to make you not take the Magus, if I'm honest with you. And nobody was taking the Primus anyway. Sorry, that's not true. The Primus was good. He wasn't bad. I think this isn't enough of a nerf where if you wanted the Primus before, you now won't take him. So it's almost nothing for the Magus, the Primus. There you go, cool. Which brings us to the final dudes, the Goremongers. We have quite a few changes to the Sanctifiers. How are these guys surviving? So, fact, Sanguine Vitae, Rejuvenate. The option of getting D3+1. Was it D3+3? Or was it... I have to find out. I have to know. Because I thought it was... You can tell I don't know the team, right? Sanguine Vitae... Which one? Oh, it was just straight 2D3. After regains 2D3 and now it's D3+1. That's a big nerf. Okay. In fairness, there are some little... So, I've only played against Goremongers one time and I smashed them because I was Angels of Death with Dueler. It was like the easiest game I've ever had against that particular opponent. It was like, oh yeah, I parried you and I kill you. Easy. So he never actually got to use his Rejuvenate against me because there was never a point because I just smashed the guy. It was brutal. It was brutal. Corn approved. But yeah, that's pretty harsh. So, but I have heard of crazy things you can do with their Rejuvenate where you just heal them straight back up to full wounds. So this is probably needed, let's be honest. I then get the Blood Herald Optive, inflicts normal damage. So Impending Apotheosis rule. Right, it's the final one, chaps. Let's hang in there. Impending Apotheosis. Once per battle, when an attack dice inflicts damage on this optive, you can ignore that inflicted damage. Cool. So this is just keeping it in line. It's a just a scratch ability, and they've said can't ignore crits. Nice. I'm cool with that. Technically a nerf, and a big one to be fair, because being able to ignore crits is very strong. And being able to say no, every possible just a scratch ability should only be on a normal dice, never a crit. I think that's just good, keeping everything in line. I do hope that no matter which team comes out and how strong or weak they are, they stick to keeping things in line. I do not think any team should ever be buffed because they're too weak and buffed to ignore crit damage when they should clearly be in line with everything else. They should balance a team in a different way if that's the only way they can feel. Yeah, you're with me. Woo. Okay, and we are done. That's everything. Nice. What do you think of that, everybody? Let me know. Genuinely, leave a comment. It's been a smooth 50 minutes, 5-0. The time flew by. I guess for you, maybe. I don't know. Because you second monitor weren't paying attention, right? Okay, so... oh, I guess I have to make a statement on GW finally doing what I've been saying the whole edition they should do, and making changes to elites, shouldn't I? So they changed every elite faction. They did not do, like... you know what? It's not even fair to say they didn't change Counteract or, like, Astartes, because they have changed how Counteract works due to guard action, and they've changed that multiple times. Anyway, so they've done interesting targeted changes differently to each faction. I think Dueler had to be changed. That's a good change. I think that Plague Marines not being -1 hit just because randomly you are in control range, I think is a good change for the health of the game. It does now mean that I legit don't know how to play Plague Marines. Legit, no clue how they're meant to work now, because that was all they had going for them when I was learning them. So pass. Miss me with that. Warp Coven, too light of a touch, didn't like that. They needed something more. It was very unimpactful. Literally, the only consistent stat we have across the entire game is that Warp Coven are too strong. Every balance patch, Warp Coven are too strong. Cool, should probably change that. I don't know. And then we have Phobos. I haven't played Phobos much. I've played them 3 times this edition, I think. So I can't really confirm or deny if that was... I disavow. I don't know. I've got no clue. But clearly, Phobos were doing quite well, despite being a 12 wound team instead of a 14 wound team. So this makes sense that they've been touched a bit. Nice. And they've been touched in the right direction. A few nerfs. Cool. Legionary... I think this makes sense. I'm not sure if it's what I would have done, but in general, I think that the big change there is going to be nerfing the Nurgle. Nerfed the Nurgle, if you know what I mean, and stopping that 8 wound auto kills, because it was just insane. Such an insane stack, but the guy that can heal by killing as well, and he's guaranteed to kill, he's guaranteed to heal. Mad. Anyway, whatever. So yeah, I think all good changes. And I think that the most important one, legit, was Dueler. That had to go. Don't get me wrong, it means that I no longer know how to play Angels of Death, because legit, every time I played them, I just played Assault Intercessors and I just charged. I said, oh, I blocked 2. Oh, you've only got 1 dice left. Oh, okay, you tickle me for 3, I kill you. Then I just did that again and again. So not being able to block 2 is massive for that team. I can definitely see their win rates falling. I can definitely see them being removed from the S tier in every tier list. They'll probably fall to a B tier. And then I think that they'll actually shake out. Good players are still going to be able to play them at A tier. So that's fair. Cool. All right, well, thanks for watching, everybody. Let me know what really stuck out to you. Because I think that this has been a long video. Not everybody wants a long video. I'm going to do some sort of, on Friday or whatever, I'll do some winners and losers type thing. And I will do something about that. Much shorter, like really concise, 8 minutes, and just talk about the changes I really like and the changes that I think were good, and the changes that maybe weren't enough. But nice and concise for you. A little bit more pizzazz, if you will. Have a good one, everybody. Goodbye.